Hey beloveds, welcome to part 2 of my self-publishing chronicles. So in the first video I spoke about the writing process, right? How you need to give yourself time to write, how you can get into writing, how you need to know your why, and a whole bunch of other things. So that video is available on my YouTube playlist. So now in this video I want to talk about the process of self-publishing, right? What is self-publishing? Right now you've written the book, it's ready, you want to get it out there, and you're considering self-publishing. I've never gone the other route, which is publishing through a publishing house. I went directly to self-publishing because that is what was convenient for me at that time. So I'm not a professional in terms of that. I can only share my experience and what I learned through my research process, right? So this will be part 2, and I think I'll have a part 3 on the book launch and so forth. So in this part, I'll be talking about how do you get, what is the process that happens after you've written your book, right? Editing and costs associated to all of that. And I'll be using figures that I came up with while going through my own process, and also be using figures that I actually paid while publishing my book, or at least roundabout. So my book is called Living Consciously, A Guide to Healing Your Past, Finding Your Purpose, and Manifesting the Life That You Want. And this is my first book that I've written, and I think it's doing relatively well right now. So the process that you need to go through after you've written your book is put it away. That's the first thing, right? Tip number 1 is that put that book away, because you want to at least give yourself time and go back and read the book to see if you want to make any changes and all of that. So once you've written the book freshly, right, everything is in your mind, and you think it may be a good idea and this and that, but the moment you step away from it and come back into it, you may have some new fresh ideas and new stories and character editing. My book is a self-help book, right? So if you're writing a novel and all of those, of course there'll be room for character development. So either way, even with my book, after going back to it after a while, I'd always go back and I guess I'd edit the narrative that I've written, or edit the things that I've written and so forth, once I'm looking at it with fresh eyes. So take some time away and go. So you've gone over your manuscript and you're really happy with it, and you're like, okay, this is my final version. So what are the next steps? The next step that I took in my journey is to go and find some editors, right? So I did a bit of research, I asked around, I went online, I remembered some people on my Twitter who had posted about writing and so forth, and I asked them what if they know any editors. So I asked around, and then I went and I found myself some editors, and I found out a little bit more about editing. So the one thing is that just know that if you're writing a book and you're self-publishing it, it's your responsibility to do as much research as you can as possible, right? So go online, the information is there in terms of the different types of editing, which I'm going to share with you, but also know that that information is there. So there's different types of editing which I didn't know until I had to go and self-publish my book. And the editing, different types of editing which I've written here so that I don't forget anything, is that there's developmental editing, there is copy editing, there's line editing, and proofreading, right? So I did I guess probably just 3 out of all 4 of those, right? So I think that you need to do developmental editing because your narrative may need to be edited and. So my book is a self-help book, right? Living Consciously is a self-help book, so it's a little bit different. So if you have characters, I did have a few stories to tell in the book, just to give some examples. I also have questions in the book. So there was developmental work in terms of editing. So the first type of editing that I did was developmental editing. So the lady that, or the editor that did my editing rather, went over the book, and she corrected grammar, she corrected all the different types of editing that needed done, right? So she went over the book and she suggested, okay, maybe add this, maybe remove this, this is not necessary, this is repetitive. And those are things that I had missed because of course I wrote the book, and for me it feels, I don't notice certain things, and for me, because I'm a speaker, I write like how I speak. So she really went in and did a bulk of the editing work, and went in and changed a lot of the way that I've structured certain things and said certain things, right? So I did developmental editing, and I also did another proofreading round, and I did another editing round, right? So basically that means that I took it to somebody who did proofreading, and that they look specifically at grammar and sentencing and so forth, right? The line editor does the similar things, but I can't really say what specifically. I would suggest that if you're writing your first book, go and don't take it to just one editor and then publish it. Take it to an editor, proofread it, and if you can, maybe take it throughout all those levels, right? Because this is self-publishing self-published, right? Meaning that you are publishing and you're financing it, and that is the difference between self-published and being financed and being published by a publishing agency, is that most times they offer the marketing, they help you with proofreading, editing, design, development, marketing, and distribution, right? So when you self-publish, most times that means you're doing all those things along with distribution. And I guess because of the internet, most times these things are much easier. As I was just saying, these things are much easier these days due to technology and the internet and all of that. So self-publishing is not as difficult as it was back then, because you'd need a lot of money. And also with apps like Canva that you can use to create your own design and so forth, which I'll get to when I get to the design portion. All right, so yeah, so self-publishing is basically you're covering all the costs of printing out this, creating this book as a product and getting it out there. So after you've done the editing, and I was saying, emphasizing that, make sure you go through at least 3 editing rounds, or at least 2. So if you cannot afford an editor, right, think of maybe someone, a university student who may, like a professional editor, think of a university student who may be doing the final year and is really good at grammar and all of that, and they can assist you. So I know certain universities have certain blocks that help their students to also make extra money, like UNISA and other universities. You can just search online and see if they offer the services of the students going through manuscripts and all of that. The same people that go through dissertations and all of that can also go through your manuscript and make sure that go over your manuscript, make sure that the grammar is fine, the lining is fine, and everything kind of makes sense. So if you don't know that, just think of somebody. So make sure your book goes through at least 3 people, and that is just so that they can give different suggestions, they can go over the editing, and someone might have missed something along the way. So my book went through 3 different people, which is the developmental editing, and also I guess copy editing as well as line editing, and then a proofreader and another editor as well, right? And I think that helped too, because my grammar is really terrible, and in writing, of course, I always try to use different sources to kind of work on my grammar and all of that. So make sure it goes through all those processes, because that means that you probably has less mistakes. And if you do, I think my book still has mistakes, even though it went through those different processes, it's going to minimize the amount of mistakes that are in there. If you don't, you can also, if you cannot afford also a developmental editor, you can also do what do you call it, maybe like a sample group where you can read the book to a few people, or send the book privately to a few people, and they can give you feedback on the characters, what they think. And these are people that, not just like your cousins, your brothers and all of that, right? This should be people that you know are well informed, they're into writing, they're good with grammar, they're good with storylines, and they're good at conceptualizing. And I think if you have different people, at least that'll give a diversity of feedback when you get it back. So find some people and just ask, can I have you in my sample? Can you just read this book? I'd like to hear your feedback, if you have any corrections, and ask politely. And people are more than willing to help sometimes if you just ask. Okay, so the next part after the editing process, right now you've gone through the editing process, what's the next step? So I went and I spoke to a graphic designer. Thankfully, I had a business development agency that was functioning, and I had a graphic designer on my team that I worked with regularly on different projects. So I went and I asked her so I'll gladly give you her numbers, because she did a really good job with my book, right? And as you can see, she just did a really good job. This one is my copy that I take everywhere with me, because I want to make, like, I don't know, I want to put marks on my other copies that I need to give to people or sell to people. So this is a copy, and that's why it has a sticker on it. So she did a really, really, really good job, and yeah, I had to pay her, of course, for that, because yeah, it's the work that she does. So this is basically my book. It has a bit of color in it, and so basically what a graphic designer, so you need typesetting and you need a graphic designer. The graphic designer is someone that will design your cover, your back, and also the inside. A graphic designer is the same person that will do the typesetting, meaning they'll work on your font, because whether you believe it or not, font is actually something that contributes to the feel of the book, right? So you have to choose a font, you have to choose a cover design, and the person should probably give you around 3 samples or so. And also at the bag, right, I had to do a whole shoot. So I planned my shoot in advance for my bag cover photo, and I mean, it's called Living Consciously, so I had to be cute. I got a makeup artist, I did all of that, because I really wanted it to resemble just the energy, like the energy that I have in the bag. And I do want to put myself in the front, because the book is not about me, it's actually about other people, but I do want people to know who I am and all of that. And yeah, I just my graphic designer really did a good job in terms of putting it and designing it and selecting the background colors. And also I spoke to her in terms of design. So when it comes to design, decide what kind of book you want, right? What do you want it to be like on the inside? So for me, I decided that I wanted it to feel like a journey, right? And that's why I have pictures and color and all of that. And I also wanted it to feel light, because this is a book about healing. So I gave the graphic designer instructions on the type of colors to use. So before you go and speak to a graphic designer, you really have to have an idea of what kind of book you want, what field you want, and what do you want the reader experience to be, because the graphic design does that, through the text, through the feel of the pages, through everything, right? The feel of the pages is not really a graphic designer, but I mean in terms of the font that's used and the colors and the pictures and the drawings and the graphics. So there's so many things to consider that most people don't consider, right? Do you want pictures if this is a biography of your life? Do you want pictures of yourself in there? How are you going to position them? Do you want diagrams? I have diagrams in my book because just to illustrate certain things in terms of the healing journey that I'm trying to portray in my book, right? And I also included color just to give the book an easier feel, because colors do have meaning. So I did research on that and I added that to the book. So that's something that I added that was unique to my book in terms of healing and so forth. So think of what do you want to add to your book that's unique. And sometimes it's also okay to just have a normal book with just font without pictures. Decide what it is that you want for you and all of that. And I will say to you that adding color and pictures and all of that does increase the cost of printing. So if you are really on a tight budget, you can also just keep the pricing at a low. Alright, so get a graphic designer and they will do your cover, they'll design your bag, and they'll also design the in-text design and all of that. Okay, cool. And then your ISBN number. So basically your ISBN number is like your ID number for your book, right? And you get that from the National Library if you're based in South Africa. So if you're in another country, just find out where you use Google, make Google your friend, where you can get your ISBN number. In South Africa, there's more than, the form is online, you can just fill it in and fill in the details and also send them your manuscript and you'll get an ISBN number. The service is quite good, so I got my ISBN number in South Africa quite quickly, right? And they also gave you an EISBN number. So EISBN number is your ISBN number for your online book publishing and so forth. So you can use that online and then you can get your ISBN number. And it's just basically a number that's used to track your book, and that they keep a system of all the books and all of that. And interesting fact, once you print out your books, you have to send a copy of the book, a few copies of the book to the National Library so that they can keep your book and keep it in the records and so forth. Okay, so that's that. And then printing, find different printers, right? Google published it. Ask published authors, self-published, and other people who work in the publishing space where they do their printing, and you'll never know who might have a good answer for you, right? So I asked around some authors that I'd met randomly, and I just said, hey, where did you use to print out your book? I also looked around for signs as I was driving, because I also find one near where I live, which was interesting, and then I also found others online. So get a quote from each one and see what they charge for each page. And the thing is, you can't just get the price of your book in terms of printing, because when you print, it's determined, the cost overall total of what your book costs, right? It determines on how many pages your book is, the type of font, the type of paper that you use, right? The kind of paper that I use is a little bit more glossy in a sense, right? And yeah, that's the paper that I chose because of the color inside the book and all of that. So yeah, decide which paper works best for you. Decide, for example, the cover also has so much color and all of that, and the type of binding that they use. So there's so many different things that contribute to the total cost of each book and how much it will cost to print it out, and that will determine your overall cost, right? So the less you have basically going on in the book, the more affordable it will be. If you have more color, more pages and more pictures, all of that stuff, it contributes to the cost of that. So a book can cost. So now to speak about the pricing, because I know that's what you guys asked me, right? What is the cost of publishing a book? As you may have noticed, the cost of self-publishing a book is different depending on all the different variables, right? How many editing processes do you go through? How much, in terms of the design work, how much design work is there to do? And then also the last bit in terms of which printer do you use? So get a few quotes from each level, right? Get a few quotes from every editor that you get a few quotes from editing companies and so forth, get a few quotes from different graphic designers and in-text designers, get a few quotes from different printing companies, so that you can get and see how much they charge for the type of paper that you want and the color, and compare and then go for what works for you. So on average, right, for this part, the proof editing, so developmental editing was between 13,000 rands to around I'd say around 18k, right? And I think that's different. I think the editor that I worked with was very lenient on me. However, the cost may differ. So yours may be 10 to 20k. So I'd say below 20k is a good bet. And then the proof editing, like I said, I always asked around because I went for what cost. But also remember, sometimes when you try to get a lower cost, you're compromising on the quality. So that is also a difficult lesson to learn along the way. However, find what works for you, your budget, and your vision. So in terms of proofreading and all of that, proofreading can cost between 2.5 to 5,000 rands, because the person is just mainly looking at grammar and they're just browsing through the book and trying to find, okay, are there any spelling mistakes that the other editors missed, right? And then I also asked a really close friend who is a PhD student to go over my book, which helped a lot, and he just gave me different direction and insights, and in terms of even the referencing and so forth, he also gave additional insights. So yeah, those are the three processes that I went through, and the cost, it was between 2.5 and 5k for the proof editing, and it was between for me it was around between 10 and 20k for the. And lastly, the printing. So the printing can cost anything between like 40 rand per book to 170 rand per book, right? So this also depends on your volume, right? So the more books that you print, the less your cost, right? So this is just a numbers game, right? So I printed 100 at a time because I'm self-published, and what I did is to fund the book is to get pre-orders before each copy, which made it easier because, I mean, I'm self-employed, I'm an entrepreneur and all of that. So the money that I was going to need in order to print out a whole, like 1,000 books, I genuinely did not have at the time. So in order to cover the cost of printing, all I did was pre-orders, obviously, which means positioning. And because I had a good social media following, which is marketing, of course, because I invested in the marketing over the years, and in terms of my brand, it was easier for me to get the numbers in order to get pre-orders. So yeah, you might actually start to have start advertising your book before it's even out, and start to build that following, start to communicate, just to start to put out content out there, you know, and start to work on your marketing strategy even before, because it actually helps a lot. So, but if you can position your book well enough, people will definitely pre-order it and all of that. So, and that is pretty much it from the self-publishing chronicles for this, I guess this video. So yeah, I've spoken about the editing, I've spoken about the design, and I've spoken about the printing. So printing, like I said, depends mainly on how much volume you're printing. The higher the volume, the lesser the cost. So mine costs between 100 and 200 to print per book, and which is why because because there's more to it and all that, and also because I wasn't printing in bulk. So I'm certain that if I could print more books, which is what I'm working on towards now, that I would be able to take down the cost of printing each book. So I guess in this video is find what works for you, look at your budget, and just remember that you don't have to have 1 million rands to print out a book, right? Self-publishing just means getting your book out there, and even if 10 people read it, 20 people, 100 people read it, that's okay, right? It's just about getting it out there, and sometimes a book can fund itself if you can put pre-orders, right? Then you can use that money to print out. However, in terms of getting the actual product, right, in terms of the grid design, all of that, just put some money aside, save, speak to different people. There's also apps that you can use to design. So Canva, canva.com. Canva is an app that you can use to design your book cover. So in conclusion, do the research. The resources are out there. If you are willing, you can find a way. And yeah, just get your book out there, and just know again that your story is valid and it doesn't have to be perfect. You can just get started, and some things you'll figure out along the way. I had to do a lot of. So in my next video, I'll be talking about marketing your book and under self-publishing chronicles. So I hope this video was helpful. Let me know in the comments what questions you have for my next video, so that I can answer them. And thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope it was helpful, and I'm sending you love where you are and wishing you all the best in your writing journey. You're almost there, just keep going, and yeah, have a vision, and your story is valid.